Dear listeners, high performers are often the last people anyone worries about. They are delivering, they are consistent, they are the ones others lean on. And because they look fine, because they are producing, the internal cost of all that performance stays invisible until it doesn't. Burnout as high performing professionals isn't a failure of discipline. It's often the result of kind of, you can say, never having been taught the inner game, the self awareness, the emotional intelligence, the honest reflection that makes sustained performance actually sustainable. That's exactly what we are talking about today. So, hey, dear listeners, welcome back to another powerful episode of Healthy Mind, Healthy Life, where we get honest about what it actually takes to feel well and lead well, not just perform well. I'm your host, Avik, and I'm really glad that all of you are with us today here. And my guest today walks at the intersection of leadership and inner work, specifically the kind of self awareness, emotional intelligence, and the reflective practice that separates leaders who sustain their performance from those who quietly burn out behind a polished exterior. So, please welcome my guest, Stephen McConnell. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Amazing, amazing. So, Stephen, before we get into the framework and the practice, I want to ask you something a bit personal. Was there a moment in your own leadership journey, where the outer game and the inner game, I mean, fell out of alignment? Where you looked capable on the surface, but something underneath was not holding. So, anything if you can share.
When I felt out of alignment, that's actually a very broad question. Most of my life.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, yeah, there was points in time where I would burn out, where I would burn myself out actually, because it's the inner work that really just
Mhm.
continues to work even when you're trying to sleep and you wake up in the middle of the night or 2 o'clock in the morning, overthinking, over preparing, over hypothesizing what could go wrong. And for me, it was a journey of many, many, many years
Mhm.
of just one small moment of awareness,
Yeah.
that, and then another small awareness, and then another small awareness. And finally, I think
Mm.
all of those combined to where I was like curious enough
Yeah.
to go on the framework that I now talk and teach, and hopefully I catch it with leaders to a point where it hasn't really impacted their life as much. But yeah, there was many times in it's not just in leadership. It's
Mm.
in personal life. It's in everything that we do. It's a coping loop. So one instance was, in fact, when getting personal here,
Mhm.
is one instance was when I realized that I was
Mm.
on a journey of alcoholism. And there were moments throughout that journey where the self-awareness of this shouldn't be right, this isn't right, this isn't who I am. And once they finally came together, I was ready to start taking actions and sober myself up. So yeah.
I agree. I totally agree. Yeah. And mm, I mean, if I also ask you about, it's a very, I'd say, common thing, but somehow we miss also. The phrase "in a game of leadership" is doing something interesting, and it it's saying that what happens inside a leader matters as much as what they do. But most leadership development still focuses almost entirely on the strategy, execution, output. So, what is the core misconception about high performance that you believe is quietly costing leaders the most?
Ooh. Now we're getting to some juicy part
Yeah.
there. I love this
Yeah.
because I want to start to say that there's a
Yeah.
distinguishment. There's first and foremost management.
Yeah.
Management is purely KPI, key performance indicator driven.
Mm,
It's numbers, it's goals, it's achievements,
mm,
and it's making sure that these standard operating procedures are followed. Leadership, and I'm going to quote John Maxwell here. John Maxwell says leadership is influence, nothing more,
mhm,
nothing less. And therefore, a good leader, external leader, influences the teams and the peers around them so that the KPIs, the management section, is managed.
mm,
What you hit upon there is very crucial. Influence, which is leadership, nothing more, nothing less, by John Maxwell. Influence in and of itself is persuasion. Now, persuasion, I'm going to go into a little bit more of L. Michael Hall, which is an neuro-linguistic programming founder, in fact.
mhm,
Influence is persuasion. Persuasion comes from how you speak to yourself and
mm,
how you persuade yourself so that as your actions come, you're authentic in your nature. You're not putting on this persona. You're not gaming for validation. You're not trying to play these power plays. You're just wholly yourself. And in being yourself, you lead authentically as yourself. And so
mm,
in my practice, I've made those distinguishments where externally we talk about leadership, and a lot of times we drive it to equal management, which is numbers based. So if I were to try and go and pitch to a corporate to take on my services to change their culture or help them in some way with leadership, I would have to speak about the external. This
mm,
culture will drive your revenue by X. This culture will increase and improve your goals by 10%. That's what they're looking for.
mm,
The truth is, if we get down to the internal portion of it, the persuasion of how we speak to ourselves,
mm,
that impacts an individual's life compoundingly for the rest of their lives. There's just, you begin to make the small daily choices that
yeah,
compound into your future as better life choices, better, experiences. And then you're literally, unless you're really very buried in gratitude, you're literally unaware of all of the opportunities around you that those choices have presented to you. A long story there, but the three definitions, I would go with the internal definition of self-persuasion to build authenticity in external actions of
yeah.
leadership.
Understood. Yep. So, like the emotional intelligence specifically, it gets talked about a lot. But I wonder, like, if it gets practiced much, because I mean, what does someone actually mean when they say a leader lacks emotional intelligence? So, and what do you have to say on this?
A leader lacks emotional intelligence. And what this brings up into my mind is they aim to be heard, not
Mhm.
to listen.
Yep.
So and this is just in one section of emotional intelligence, but it's a key indicator where empathy is not necessarily present for the team, for the community, for the
Mm,
peers. They want to be here. They want to speak and be heard and
mm,
people to listen to them. And if they
mm,
have to stop and listen, it's not with an empathy. It's not for communication.
mm.
And this is a key indicator that the emotional intelligence needs to be developed there.
Yeah, got it. And obviously, I have to say that so emotional intelligence is not about being warm or likable, but it's all about being accurate about yourself and responsive to what's actually happening around you. And when that's missing, the gap between how a leader thinks they they are showing up and how they are actually landing can be enormous. So yeah, exactly. So
Yeah, I would agree with you, and I would say
mm,
the word would be flexible or agile, but consistent,
agile, yeah.
because we cannot predict what we're walking into. If you're walking out onto the shop floor of a
Mm,
manufacturing, you cannot necessarily predict how the situations are, what the team is, or what an individual is like, but you're
mm,
consistent with everybody
mm,
and flexible enough to adapt your own skills to be consistent. So yeah,
mm,
I love that description.
mm. Exactly, exactly. So yeah, root causes and the deeper patterns, if I have to talk, like you have connected that self awareness, emotional intelligence, and reflection together as a trio. And I think that's deliberate. So they are not just, they're not the same thing but they reinforce each together. So when you sit with a high performing professional who is kind of, suppose, heading towards burnout or already in it, so what is the deeper pattern underneath? Like, what has usually been absent or underbuilt for a long time before things started to crack?
Well, each journey,
Mm,
especially in the high performers, each journey is
mm,
very, very personal for them.
yeah.
The the symptoms
Mm,
to the root cause comes up in many different ways. I've had
mm,
owners of companies where
yeah.
they cannot keep a stable personal life.
Mm, mm,
They've built the company, their founder, and they've grown it as the founder into ownership of multi-million dollar company.
mm,
However, their personal life, they've gone through multiple significant others.
mm,
They're estranged from their children. And so
mm,
really what it is then they're thinking they're burnt out because of their personal life.
mm,
And the conversation that I have, and you kind of touched on it. I love that you touched on it, is that there's a deliberate system that we
exactly.
talk about and we test and we discuss. Some of it's emotional intelligence, others is their strengths, if they're aware of their weaknesses, and many aren't aware of their weaknesses,
Mm,
or others have a bias, a belief that if they're weak in an area, they
mm,
absolutely must practice that area until they're strong. And that's not true. That's what a team is for. They must be aware of it. They must protect their weakness. They must be understanding it, maybe practice it, continue to grow on it. That's great. But a team member is there to be strong in that area that they're not strong in.
yeah.
So yeah, the symptoms show up very
Mm,
individual, like very unique to each individual. And then what we do is we look at what the root cause of
mm,
what's happening.
mm,
And like for instance, in particular, there's several clients that had had a very rough
mm,
personal life.
yeah.
And it comes back down to they believe that success means
Mm,
financial success and you have to sacrifice for something.
mm,
And then the work that we do individually on that basis aims towards the understanding that they can take their success, their strengths within what they've done in building a business, begin to see the family unit as a very empathetic business. Like you are
mm,
feeling the emotions of the business and you can have a success within all of your life. And then we start to build those foundations, those systems, and grow them from there.
true. Very, very true. Yeah. And I mean, it's one of those practices that sounds obvious, but is genuinely rare among the people who might need it most. So, what gets in the way? Like, why do high performers specifically tend to kind of resist?
Wow. Why do we all resist? Then why do
Exactly. Yeah.
it really it is the more we each and every single one of us
Mm,
resist is because of our ego.
mm,
If I were to ask somebody, who are you? They start with, I am such and such.
mm,
For me, I am a coach. I am a mentor. Everything after I am is past the state of being, if that makes sense. So it's egotistical.
mm,
And the more you build a foundation of high performance, the more you you learn, there's the word, more you learn to take risks in a very specific way with
mm,
your strengths, which then on top of it, the larger your ego needs to be managed and is. Some people
exactly.
do this very, very well in keeping themselves humble.
Yeah.
And others, they have this sense of ego. Whether they treat others without empathy or not is not the question here, but their mind, they are
Mm,
all of this. I am a CEO, a president, a founder. I am the breadwinner. I am the, and all of those categories and titles stack up. That really creates a resistance to seeing that we as human beings with ego, we
mm,
refuse to see that we're burning ourselves out.
exactly. Hmm. So, I want to ask you here, like, for the high performing professionals who are listening right now, maybe a senior leader, maybe someone running their own business, or maybe someone who has been going hard for years and is starting to feel something they cannot quite name. So, what is the first honest inner game practice you would recommend? Like, not a productivity tool, but something like, what do I say? Like, not a morning routine checklist, also, but something that genuinely builds self awareness.
Hmm. The answer is simpler than many realize, and that is be curious about yourself.
Okay.
And when I say that, I mean
Hmm.
listen to what you're saying externally. If you're having a conversation, listen to what you are saying, and then curiosity. Be curious as to where that came from.
Hmm.
And I'll say an extreme instance in my personal life, or not in my professional life. There was a point in time where I was seeking validation. I needed somebody to say one way or another, whether it be body language or something, that I was worth something.
Mhm.
And one moment of small curiosity was that I had told a little white lie.
Okay.
And the situation, the truth wasn't far from what I had said. My white lie sounded better.
Mm,
And I in my mind said, well, why? If the truth is just a little bit worse, why did I go with speaking without thinking this part untruth?
mm,
And the realization was that I was seeking validation. I wanted the approval of this person. At the time, it was the owner of the business. I wanted their approval.
yeah.
And once I realized that self awareness, I then had to obviously stop the conversation and
Mm,
say, wait, this is not true. This is the truth. It's not far from the truth, but it sounded a little bit better. And so really the curiosity is catching yourself in those small moments where you
mm,
know that something is important to you, like truth, but
mm.
steered away from it. And being curious as to why that is. If family's important to you, but you haven't you have an estranged relationship with your children, why? Look at those and be curious. And that would be the first indicator and first way to build self-awareness.
Got it. And before we move, I want to ask you, if someone wants to connect with you, what would be the great medium to connect?
If someone wants to connect with me, go to my website. My website's mindsetgrowth.com, and that's spelled with MY, where you own your own mindset. So MYNDSET growth.com. And you can reach out to me there. You can email me. You can, check out what the blog says, all of that. If that's not in the scope, also look up for me LinkedIn. I'm Stephen McConnell on LinkedIn, and you can message me there.
Amazing. So, dear listeners, what I'll do is I'll put all the links and the details into the show notes for your easy reference so that you can easily reach out and connect with Stephen. And dear listeners, like before we go, I have to say this, like from this conversation, I'm really taking away with something great. It's like uh, sustainable high performance is not a strategy. It is a relationship with yourself that you either tend or you pay for the later, right? So that is my takeaway. I would definitely love to listen from you, dear listeners, like what you are taking away from this conversation. Please do write us, share in the comment. It would really be great to know. And also, like, that's a wrap for today's episode of Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. And if something Stephen said today landed for you, if it named something you have been feeling but haven't had words for, then trust that. It's a signal worth following. And Stephen's details will be in the show notes, as I mentioned. So if you know a leader who is running on MP and might need to hear this conversation, pass it on. With this hope, this is your host, Avik, and the inner work is not a detour from high performance. It is the foundation of it. So take care of yourselves. See you next time. Thank you so much.